Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the MMA Shower. In this month's episode, we shall preview UFC 288. That's UFC 288. Sterling versus Cejudo for the UFC Bantamweight Championship of the World. This podcast, as always, is sponsored by Hatton James Legal. That's hattonjameslegal.co.uk for all your employment law needs. And sponsored by Overst Events. That's overstevents.com. Your event just easier. And last but not least, this podcast would not be possible without our friends from SRBMedia. That's SRBmedia.co.uk. Head over to there for all your array of podcasts, football, music, and other genres as well. So to contact the podcast, you can email the show. We have got I think one or two fan questions this month, which is good. Is the MMA Show 7, the MMA Show number 7 at gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, the MMA Shower, and Facebook page is Let's Talk MMA, and we'll have a bit of news around the MMA UFC world as well. Okay, so that's all the introductions done, and I'm now going to introduce my co-host, and it's Matt Penny from Purely MMA. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Afternoon. All good. Another good show coming up, and at time of recording, this is next weekend, so it should be a really good show. It's a little bit top heavy for the top of the main card, but I suppose that's kind of the way that most pay-per-view cards go anyway. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you mentioned the card being top heavy. It had to be reshaped in the last sort of couple of weeks as we record, like you say, a week before the actual event. And I was looking forward to Oliveira and Dariush, but unfortunately that got cancelled. I think that's been bumped to the next one or the one after.
Yeah, UFC 289, I think.
Yeah. 289. So, but I was looking forward to that. But
he can't seem to get a break, can he, Dariush?
No.
But I know he had a fight in October, something like that, last year. But before that, it was like a year and a half, wasn't it? So he tends to have these big breaks, and he can't really put together a decent run. He always has these challenges thrown in front of him.
Yeah, and Dariush is one of those guys that's what I would call like a traditional martial artist. And what I mean by that is that certain fighters, they come into this and they still treat it as a martial arts pursuit. And he said, I think in his last fight or the fight before, I think when he beat Ferguson, maybe the one before, he said that he's not going to beg, he's not going to call out someone. His record speaks for himself. I think he's 9-0 in the last sort of 10 fights. He hasn't lost a fight he's 9 in a row. And some people say he's been overlooked because of that.
Yeah, I think we talk about it occasionally on these predictions. You know, the UFC, it is kind of 50% martial arts competition and 50% entertainment, and it is the guys who have a good character, they tend to get pushed a little bit quicker and more often. And Dariush is, he's loyal to that and says, well, I'm not going to, become somebody I'm not and do something stupid to grab attention. I'm just going to be me and keep winning, and eventually I'll get noticed, and I'm sure he will. But he certainly has a lot of challenges thrown in front of him. Yeah,
and I think the other most recent fighter I can put in that category was Leon Edwards. I think he went 9-0, 10-0. Then he beat Nate Diaz and got the title shot as well.
Yeah, it just takes a standout fight, and you thought the Tony Ferguson one would have been a good one, but then he was out for a year and a half. So, yeah, it's an odd one, but hopefully we'll get to see that fight against Oliveira.
I don't think this is official, but from my perspective, from my point of view, I think Dariush and Oliveira is the number one contender for fighting, for the title.
Yeah, it should be. It should be.
I've not heard anything official. That's just me assuming. Yeah.
Well, they never do it officially for a number one contender, do they?
Well, I think they have. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, true, but it's like you know what Dana's like. How certainty can you take his word? That's.
Are you calling Dana a liar again? You keep saying that. I don't believe you.
Absolutely not. just some things he say don't come true. You know.
Okay.
Kind of links onto a topic that I'm going to mention later on to do with London. So.
Okay. Cool. That's good. So UFC 289. We're talking about that. We're not actually talking about 288, but we will get to that. And the headline for that is Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena. So, and that's fight number 3 for them. Yeah. So 1-1. So this is the rubber match, as I say.
Yeah, and I never want to disrespect any fighters really, but that as a main event, I just don't see it personally. I think that's going to be quite a. I think he needs to put some real top fights in that main card to really pull in the casual viewers. I don't think that's going to be a massive draw for people. It's going to be more of a concrete fan kind of thing, more of a passionate fan kind of thing, more than the casuals that's going to come in and usually watch the big cards, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to actually talking about UFC 288. So before we get on to we're going to preview the co-main and the main events, but I've noticed that Kron Gracie is on the card as well. Any thoughts on obviously being a Gracie and Hickson Gracie's son? Any thoughts on that? Or?
Yeah, there's a couple of like really underrated guys on that main card. Kron Gracie and obviously Bryce Mitchell also fighting both at featherweight.
I think the Bryce Mitchell fight has been cancelled as well, according to what I'm reading. Yeah.
Oh, has it?
I think, yeah. Jonathan Pierce, he was going to fight, and he says cancelled next to it.
Ah, brilliant.
Which is unfortunate. Yeah.
Never mind about that then. Kron Gracie. I was really looking forward to like his fights when he joined the UFC years ago. I'm not sure what happened. Did he go off?
He had a couple of fights in Bellator recently, and then back to the UFC. Yeah.
Okay. So he won against years ago. He won against a guy who was like 10-10 or something like that, and then lost to Cub Swanson. And obviously, yeah, you know what you're going to get from the Gracies. So it's nice to see a young. Well, he's not even young anymore, is he?
No.
But it's good to see a different name,
more recent.
More recent name in the lineage. Fighting in UFC is supposed to be the biggest mixed martial arts company in the world. So
yeah, I think it's always interesting when you have that family name in the cage. But moving on to the co-main event. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, it's Belal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. Now Gilbert Burns fought a month ago, 6 weeks ago, in UFC 287 Miami.
So that was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So by the time this comes around, literally going to be 4 to 5 weeks. So he didn't take a lot of damage in the Masvidal fight, so that's a big plus. He obviously went through training camp and cut weight. So whether he knew he had an inkling he was going to have a fight, he didn't probably put on too much weight. So this time round, a weight cut shouldn't be that tough. The only sort of factor I can think of that may be a negative from his perspective or in his corner will be he probably hasn't had a lot of time to sort of fight or to a fight strategy for Belal Muhammad. But Belal Muhammad is not very complicated or an expert in one thing. He's very good, obviously, but he doesn't strike me as you need a particular fight strategy to fight against him. So just give us your thoughts on first of all, the fighting styles of each fighter, and then we'll go on to the predictions after I give my input as well.
And not to forget, Gilbert Burns also fought in January as well. So, he's coming off
indeed.
three fights in 4 months this year. I think you can't underestimate how much of an effect a short notice fight has. He's not fighting somebody who's, unranked and doesn't show much threat. I mean, this is a guy who's sort of top of the division. So obviously there's going to be concern for how fresh he's going to be. But obviously, we've done it recently, haven't we? We literally a couple of weeks ago talked about Burns. We know how well-rounded he is and how lethal he can be, sort of all over. Probably the best guy that Belal has fought as well. If he can get the win here, I mean, to stop Belal, what's he on now? 9-10 win streak, something like that. Is he on?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Obviously ignoring the no contest with Leon Edwards. I mean, you can't really underestimate how a win against him is going to boost you up. And a title shot is going to be coming later on this year if you have to stop him. But I think Belal is kind of heading into the direction of Leon Edwards, where he's racking up all these wins against, not nobodies, decent names, but isn't getting that title shot. Now, as I mentioned earlier, people tend to get it more entertaining than he is, or whatever. We don't know how Dana thinks, but yeah, he's heading in that direction where he's kind of underrated and not being sort of given the due rewards that he deserves.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier about number one contender, and as much as this can be official, this fight is a number one contender for the winner of Edwards versus Covington, which we're not sure when that's going to happen.
That's written all over it.
Yeah.
Written all over it. This has to be number one.
Yeah, and Dana has said it. So you can take that with a pinch of salt, but he's officially said it in a press conference that this is the number one fight for that welterweight title once the two guys have fought. So that's why maybe Gilbert Burns thought, well, he can't miss up an opportunity like this, and it will be 3 fights in effectively 3 months, 4 months of fight a month. So, but he knows he's got a massive carrot dangling at the end of this fight, so you can't blame him for that. But I think that the biggest advantage that Gilbert Burns has got is he's an expert in jiu-jitsu, and Belal he's very good all round. He's fought some good opponents, and unfortunately the Leon Edwards fight didn't test him, didn't go that far. But he's put a win streak together. You can't ignore a win streak. He's up to, is he number 4 or something, or number 5? He's in the top 5 anyway. And obviously Gilbert Burns is up there as well. So it's a very high level matchup to the elite in that division, in the 170. So, yeah, as I mentioned, training camp, it could be an advantage for Burns. I think he'll treat it as an advantage. He seems like a pretty intelligent guy. He's got his feet on the ground, so he's probably doing the right things once he's not fighting. But Belal Muhammad, he was really, itching and sort of promoting himself for he wanted to jump the queue and fight Edwards instead of Covington a few weeks ago, just before the Miami card, but everyone shot that down, including Dana, and I think he was trying a couple of promotional stunts. He had a T-shirt of with Covington's face on it. He was on some podcast or some show, but he tried the non-fighting things to get up there, as you sometimes have to do, but it didn't work. But he's got a number one contender. So who do you think's gonna get the spot for the next sort of fight for the championship?
Do you know what? I always, the odd couple of times I've seen Belal fight, I always thought he looked undersized. Even for 170, I thought he looked a bit. The reach didn't look great. I don't know if it was his body type. I just didn't think he looked and had the presence. But looking at the stats, he's actually a little bit bigger than Burns. So maybe that's just a trick of the camera. But yeah, you said it spot on there. I mean, this is by far the best guy I think that the Belal has fought. He's the best. He's got the best run behind him as well that Belal has fought. Belal, the bigger names that he's fought in the past have tend to be on the going downwards in their careers. So it'd be interesting to see if he can hold himself if he does go down the grappling and wrestling route against somebody so well established in that game. I think it would be brave, and the weight cut I think Brett Okamoto said that they've both got a cut about 18 pounds because this was only announced last week. So that's a hell of a cut for both of them.
It is.
If I had to put money on a fight that I think has a good chance of being overweight or like a purse cut to the other guy, I would say this one has a good chance of missing weight from either guy, really. But I think, Joe, the run that Burns has had and the sort of run that he's putting together and the confidence he's got going into this, maybe also a bit underrated with his skills. I think he's going to get the win here. I think he really has the talent to derail Belal's run. This is the first, maybe not the first time, because obviously Belal beat Sean Brady, of course, who was on a great run. But this Burns is the real top guy, skill-wise and in terms of form that he's fought possibly in his whole career.
Yeah.
So I would go with Burns' win, and it's almost erring on the side of caution because I just think he is in a great run, and I think he has enough tools to threaten Belal for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good point about weight cuts of 14 pounds, which is a stone in British money, or 6.5 kilos in the rest of the world. So under normal circumstances in the normal world, that is a lot of weight. But in MMA weight cutting, they normally do 10 to 14 pounds overnight, literally from Thursday to Friday for the weigh-ins. I've even heard, I can't remember which fighter did 24 pounds overnight. Obviously extremely dangerous and extreme weight cutting. But I'm just looking at the last sort of 5 or 6 fighters that Burns has fought, and you mentioned it, the quality of who they fought, and going back to Gunnar Nelson, okay, maybe not the greatest at the welterweight, but Damian Maia, that was back in 2020. He beat him. Tyron Woodley, he beat him 23 years ago, so Woodley was still thereabouts. He had a title fight with Usman. He obviously got TKO'd there. And then he beat Stephen Thompson. He lost to Hamzat Chimaev. And then he beat Neil Magny and then Jorge Masvidal. So out of the two fighters, he's certainly been sharpened better than Belal. But, that's not Belal's fault. It's just who you're put up against. But Gilbert Burns has certainly fought the better quality fighters out of the two in the last 6 or 7 fights.
Yeah, for sure. And slightly more often as well, I would say.
Yeah.
Belal hasn't taken out years, don't get me wrong, but it's Burns seems to be a constant in the division, constantly up for any fight and constantly willing to accept anything. Okay.
So decision time, Matt. Put your money where your mouth is.
I'll go Gilbert Burns win. I think he has the tools to derail Belal for sure. And of course, he's done it more often against higher opposition, like you said.
Yeah.
So I would say for sure that Burns definitely has more potential. And like I said, erring on the side of caution, I'll go Burns just because of the form that he's in, the regularity of his fights and the competition that he fought at.
And how do you think he's going to do it?
Probably a decision. I can't see a finish for either. Especially, it tends to happen as well in these fights on short notice. Both guys won't go crazy because they don't want to end such a short notice fight on like a knockout loss. So they'll both go in with a little bit of caution, I think.
I agree. I'm going to go for Burns, but I think it will be a submission from Burns. And the reason why I say that, it is a 5-round, even though it's a co-main, but it's a 5-round event, which is why I think it's guaranteed. It's a number 1 contenders match. So there's 5 rounds. So could that be a problem for Belal, because he's only had 3 to 4 weeks to get ready for a 5-round match? Whereas Burns, if he's kept in shape, he should be sharp from the last fight as well. So I think in the later rounds, if he goes that far, I think Burns will maybe get stronger. Belal Muhammad will probably get weaker, and then I think Burns will submit him. Just my theory there.
I think the 5-rounder is a little bit weird. Is that confirmed? Was it?
Yeah, and that's the reason that it's a number 1 contender. I think Dana said it in one of his announcements that I think they asked for a 5-rounder, but he definitely said it's a 5-rounder. Yeah,
that's quite brave, isn't it, to go into a fight on such short notice and agree to a 5-rounder.
Shows how desperate they were to get that number one contender spot and be the next in line after Covington and Edwards.
Yeah, for sure. And they desperately needed another fight, obviously, for this card. It would have been very. No offense to the other guys on the card, but it would have been a rather weak one if they couldn't find another sort of headlining co-main.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo for the Bantamweight division championship. And Henry Cejudo is coming off a 2 or 3 year layoff when he beat TJ Dillashaw at strawweight, was it? Or was it? No, it was a yeah, it was one down, wasn't it? Yeah, because TJ Dillashaw was the bantamweight champion. Then he dieted down to strawweight 115, I think it is. So Cejudo's coming off a 2 or 3 year layoff, and Sterling is 2 title defences in now. So give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's 3 years. It'll pretty much be 3 years to the day when the spike card comes around, and I kind of feel like a couple of months ago when we were reviewing John Jones, it's a very similar situation. Because he went off retired, he was fully retired. It wasn't like John Jones who said, you definitely would be back. We thought Cejudo was gone, and following him on social media, he got chubby. He had a kid as well, and he was really embracing the whole dad thing, and he just didn't think that he would return. So obviously the main question is ring rust. Is it a thing? Is he going to come back the same fighter as he left? I've got to be honest, I'm really surprised that he came out of retirement for Sterling. No offense to the guy, right? But do I think this is the big blockbuster that I'd imagine Cejudo would come back for? Probably not. That's not me ignoring Sterling's win run or the people that he has beaten, because his death row of guys that he's beaten is incredible, really. But do I consider him like this superstar who should drag Cejudo out? I don't think I do. But obviously something has been said or something has been pitched to Henry Cejudo, and it's got him out of retirement, out of dad life, and back into the cage. So the question is, what about ring rust? Is he going to come back the same guy? Are you out of retirement for good? Like, is this you making a full comeback, or is this you coming back for like one fight to show that you can still do it and then head off again into the sunset with $2 million? We don't know. We don't know that yet, and obviously that will be something to look to after the fight. Just one thing that we know that we're going to expect is the cringe. So the cringe returns for sure. Yeah,
no, you make a good point. That I remember Henry Cejudo, when he did retire, he was saying, "Oh, he's only going to come out for something mega," and I agree.
That's why he retired. He retired because he
didn't see a challenge out there. Yeah,
he beat Dominic Cruz, Marlon Moraes, Dimitri, and then he said, "Well, there's nobody left, so I'm off. See you later." I just didn't think Sterling would be the guy. So I thought it'd be like a massive superstar in that division to come along and say, "Right, Cejudo, we want you." But this came out of not out of nowhere, but it was just a bit of a surprise.
It is, so the points you mentioned, he's been off 3 years, he's become a family man and so on. So it depends on his motivation. I think he's just coming again as a one-off, because I think his family's increasing and things like that. So he's got other things. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got his own sort of training camp. John Jones went to train there before his last fight against Cyril Gane. So, I'm edging towards Sterling because of those reasons. But would it surprise me if Cejudo wins? No, he's a winner. He's Olympic gold medalist. He became the strawweight champion and the bantamweight champion. And so it's going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And the main question is, what kind of condition are you going to come back in? Are you going to be the same kind of guy? I think John Jones sort of deceived a lot of people because maybe now we're looking at Cyril Gane as, well, maybe you weren't that superstar that we thought you were, kind of thing. Aljamain Sterling comes into this fight having beaten everybody. He is kind of in that situation that Cejudo was in. He has beaten everybody. I mean, he took the title in a bit of a weird circumstance, didn't he? Obviously, with the disqualification, everybody sort of accused him of taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
But he then beat Petr Yan properly. He beat Dillashaw, retired Dillashaw, and then every other contender that there has been, he's beaten. So, is ring rust a thing? Will Cejudo come back in the best condition? Will he come back the same man? If he comes back the same man and he doesn't miss a step, I think he can offer a lot for Aljamain Sterling, and maybe that's why the UFC have turned to him. Because obviously at the end of his last run, Cejudo, he wasn't just a wrestler, and he wasn't just doing that. He was knocking guys out left, right, and centre. So he was the whole package, I thought. Anyway, He had that entertainment value. Love him or hate him with the massive cringe. He was entertaining, and people wanted to see him fight to watch him lose, essentially. So if it's hard to make a prediction, if you want the prediction. If Cejudo comes back and he is 100% and is looking good as ever, I think he'll get the win. But we don't know that yet. So I will say Sterling win as well, just because I think not only were you out of the game for 3 years, but you were on social media, you looked, Cejudo, you looked considerably bigger. You did let yourself go, and you did make fun of yourself and letting yourself go. You became a dad. I think that's just a whole step further than John Jones, because John Jones stayed training for that whole time that he was out. So I'll go Sterling win. I think it will be probably a decision again. I feel like I'm boring with the decisions, but I just don't. I think Cejudo will be in shape. I think he'll be fit enough, and I think he'll have the stamina to last. But I just don't see him being knocked out and sent home with his tail between his legs in disgrace. So I'll go Sterling, and I'll go decision win. Okay.
I think Sterling is the more logical or safer option, we could say. But Henry Cejudo, he's been a winner all his life, right through college wrestling, and then obviously Olympics, and he must have won world championships. Then he became a mixed martial artist, and then in the UFC, I remember in his early days he was struggling to make weight at bantamweight, or probably straw weight, as he was trying to get down to that level. But then he turned it around, and then he beat the current champion at that time, and Demetrius Johnson. And then he went on a little run. He wasn't a prolific defender of the belt, but he beat anyone who stepped up. And then someone came to his division, TJ Dillashaw, and he beat him. So I don't think he would come back if he didn't think he could win. And he's going to do everything in his power to make sure he can win. So training, camp, and training partners, and just the whole infrastructure of preparing for a fight camp. So logically, Sterling seems to have probably better credentials. Cejudo, layoff, retired, family man, etc., and all that, and other interests, business interests as well. But I'm going to go for Cejudo, and I think it's going to be a TKO based on that.
Shocking to shock the world. Do you know what? I will say it again. If he is back, and after the first round, Cejudo looks in prime condition. He looks exactly like he did before he left, and he looks like he hasn't missed a step. I would agree. I think Cejudo will win. And if there wasn't a massive layoff, if we were talking about this in December 2020, right, where there was no massive layoff for Cejudo, I would say Cejudo all day, easy win, not easy win, but comfortable win.
Yeah.
I don't see who's going to beat him, kind of thing. I've erred on the side of caution again. Call me boring if you want. Just because Aljamain, I think he hasn't been given the props that he deserves for his great run. He's had a great run. He hasn't lost since 2017. I a multitude of different victories, from striking to submissions to decisions. So he seems to be not almost an equal, but he's getting there to where Cejudo was when he retired. So it is very 50-50. And like I said, if Cejudo comes in that first round and looks top notch, then I agree with you. He should get the win. But just erring on the side of caution. And
nothing wrong with that.
Later and see who's right.
Okay, so we've now previewed the main event and bits about the card as well. UFC 288, which is going to be in Newark, New Jersey. So that's hometown. I'm not sure it's an advantage, but it's hometown for Aljamain Sterling, and obviously his whole camp, Ray Longo and those guys. They're all based there, so that'll probably be good for him. So moving on to the world of MMA news, what you got for us, Matt, this month?
Well, linking back to what we said at the start of the show about Dana and how he lies or stuff he says doesn't exactly come true, we've recently had UFC London announced for the 22nd of July. Not a pay-per-view, which I think is odd. I can't remember what press conference it was. It might have been after Leon Edwards defended the belt. He said, we're definitely coming back to London in July. I would prefer a pay-per-view. The fight night thing doesn't really do anything for us because we can't put on Edwards on a fight night. But it is a fight night, so I expect it to be a Tom Aspinall kind of main event. That's probably what it's going to be, which again is fine. But he was bigging it up, Dana White. This is going to be a pay-per-view. We need a pay-per-view. Edwards can main event there. So it doesn't look like we're going to get that in him versus Colby in July, that's for sure.
I think Covington and Edwards will fight in November when it's like an annual event now, Madison Square Garden. I think Covington's fought there once, maybe twice in the last couple of years. So I think that will be the Madison Square Garden main event.
Hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. They tend to put on 2 or 3 title fights in those MSG cards. That'd be cool. For sure. I think it's partly good for UK fans, I think, because the average ticket price for UFC 286 at the O2 was £225, and the average for a fight night is about 88. In the past, I've said they're still quite expensive, and they probably are for a UFC fight night at the O2. But I think that goes in, it's because it's London prices, and all the cheap tickets tend to go very quickly. And then only the expensive ones are left, and that tends to go to the celebrities and stuff like that. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter. I've been involved with, at Purely MMA. We've watched discussions go back and forth, and we find it weird what Dana White's obsession with the O2 is. We know he tends to build, let's say, these relationships with the venues, but we've got lots of good indoor venues in the UK. So if you have to put a fight night on, you could really put it somewhere else. You could look at Manchester and Birmingham has like 2 really big international centres. You've got Liverpool as well, which they've done before. So I think it's a bit weird that O2 is now the sort of go-to. I'm guessing they have some sort of agreement set up, like the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. I'm guessing they have some sort of cut price deal, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah, there's plenty of other venues, and Edwards is from Birmingham, so that would have made a lot of sense. But I think that's a recent. That's a decent sort of. It may be a decent card, but you're right. It's going to be a fight night card.
Yeah, it's going to be a Tom Aspinall main event, I assume, and it's weird. It would be great if we got Covington, Edwards at MSG. The MSG card's always good, but it would be really great to see Edwards get his sort of hometown fight. He's had his home country fight. So now it'd be great if he got his literal hometown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, anything else?
I saw Conor McGregor is back in the USADA drug testing pool, so looks like we definitely. Well, it looks like we will get that fight between him and Michael Chandler at some point. I'm not sure when that's going to be because it's premiering soon, that Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. So it's hard because McGregor, you think he would main event either Las Vegas or MSG, but you got the events stacking up now, and the sort of main events being slotted in. So you wonder where he fits in that, because usually it's like International Fight Week or the November card. So it's interesting to see where he slots in there.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see when he is sort of ready to fight, shall we say? Because I wonder how the testing. Wonder what the ferocity of the testing is going to be. They're going to test him, every other day, every week, because he has been out 6 months, a year, and he's put on all that weight and started all the rumours about juicing up and steroids. So
it's been 2 years now, hasn't it? It's been 2 years since his last fight, since the leg break.
Yeah, but was he at the pool since then, or was he?
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
Yeah. He's been out the pool for a long time, so that's why the whole conversation was about him getting back into it. And I don't know if you've seen the video of Tank versus Garcia at the weekend, the boxing event. Conor, for some reason, he was let into Ryan Garcia's locker room after the fight, and he looked coked up. He looked wired, like off his face, giving Ryan Garcia like boxing tips and doing shadow, it was like you just wonder how often he gets tested and how strong the testing is, because I think Joe Rogan the other month said that Conor was out of the pool for a reason, and he did the movies, but he did the filming for the movie, where obviously you can take steroids in life, as long as you're not fighting. So
Hollywood is the hotbed of steroids with all the action heroes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just you wonder what he's been doing and what he continues to do. So I think you need 6 months. So if he just joined this month, that suggests around October, November time. So maybe
end of the year
he will get. Maybe he will get like a. I can't believe he'd be on a co-main like in MSG. So I'm guessing he'll be like at a main event.
Oh, for sure, it'll be main event. Yeah. 1 million plus pay-per-views guaranteed.
Yeah, probably to end his career. And obviously he's got a documentary coming out as well next month
on Netflix. Yeah.
Which I'm really looking forward to, because he did the documentary like 5 years ago, which he did himself, and that was quite insightful to like his life, and that's when he was active and when he was dedicated to the fight game. Now I'm not so sure, so it would be good to see the change in like his background from there to now.
Okay, anything else, Matt?
Nothing standouts. It's been a little bit quiet.
Okay, that's fine. We've got time for a fan question, so that's good. So this one's from Javier in Spain, and it's regarding the heavyweight division. So Blachowicz knocked out Curtis Blades last week, and he said that he's going to wait for the winner of John Jones versus Stipe. We don't know when they're going to fight. People are saying July, but that's only 3 months away, so we would expect an announcement soon. So what do you think of the heavyweight division, and are you excited about Blachowicz regarding his knockout power and how many knockouts he's had in a row?
Oh, Pavlovich, scary dude, like that, unbelievable power, and just the guys that he has knocked out over the past year or two is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't think we'll get to see that fight between him and John Jones. All the rumours seem to suggest that he's going to have one fight against Miocic, sort of cement his greatest of all time status by miles, and then just walk off into the sunset. The only thing I would say about Pavlovich is his name at the moment with like a casual audience isn't there. I think he's starting to get really noticed by the diehard fans, for sure. I don't think you can ignore him now.
No,
he's by far and away got to be the number one contender. And it's how long we've been doing this show together, for a couple of years, and before that we've done various shows together. And on every show where I discuss heavyweights, I always say we really need some guy to step out from the shadows and really cement themselves as like a new contender.
Yeah.
Like, Tai Tuivasa came along recently.
Then he went up and down a bit, hot and cold. Yeah.
Up and down, wins and losses. But Pavlovich seems to, he got knocked out against Overeem like years ago now. But it's unbelievable talent, and he's got to be the heavyweight champ going forward for probably a couple of years. For years to come. I don't think we'll see the John Jones fight, which is a little bit of a shame. Yeah,
but Pavlovich reminds me a bit of the run that what's his name, Derek, the big heavyweight, Derek Lewis. Yeah. When he was he went on a crazy run and he was knocking out people with 20 seconds to go, losing 3 rounds to 0, and. Pavlovich reminds me of that kind of sort of ferocity, and he'll just go through people. But obviously, he's going to get to a level, and that will be tested.
Also, Francis Ngannou as well, quite similar. Obviously, Francis did lose a couple along the way when it came to wrestling, but he changed things up. And I mean, a fight between Ngannou and Pavlovich is kind of the dream heavyweight battle, I would say, in terms of boxing and striking. There's going to be no wrestling there. But yeah, we've seen guys come and go. I've always said we need a couple of fresh blood and fresh meat in the division, because you had Rosenstreich come in, who looked promising for a while, but then lost a couple. So Pavlovich seems the real deal, and scary.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Scary power, for sure.
Yeah. Juggernaut power. Okay, that brings us to the end of this podcast. So this has been the preview of UFC 288, Sterling versus Cejudo, from Newark, New Jersey in the United States, and sponsored by Hatton James Legal. That's hattonjameslegal.co.uk for all your employment law needs and Overst events for your event management. That's overstevents.com. And so, Matt, tell the audience what you're doing, where they can contact you.
So, at Purely MMA on Twitter. Every event we'll be watching live. We struggle through the UK times and watch all the events, and like to discuss with all our followers on Twitter. So give us a follow, and I'm definitely going to look at going to the UFC London event. If what I read is correct and the average price is about £80, that's all right for a UFC event. So I'm going to look at that, and we'll be tweeting from that as well. So at Purely MMA on Twitter.
Sounds good. Okay. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to the next podcast. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be, and thank you for listening to the MMA show.